Hello everyone and welcome to episode 32 of the YarnderWoman podcast. My name is Melinda. You can find me as YarnderWoman on both Instagram and Ravelry. And today is Wednesday the 25th of November 2015, and as always I'm coming to you from Perth in Western Australia. Thank you to everyone who has come to see me today. It's lovely to spend some time with you and I'm really looking forward to chatting. I've got quite a bit to talk about and a few things to show you. I would like to firstly point out, with today being the 25th of November, that is White Ribbon Day, which I believe is an international day of recognition to stop violence against women and violence against children. I'll just put in a caveat. I completely understand and recognise that men can also be the victims of domestic violence, and that definitely does happen as well, but proportionately women and children are the higher number of victims, and that's why the focus is for White Ribbon Day. So if there is an opportunity for you to buy a white ribbon or lend support through that way, that'd be great. But also everyone take a stand to make an end to violence against women and children. I think it's really important, and it's definitely a cause that speaks very strongly to me. So there's my plug for the charity today. But speaking of charities, I would like to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of my toes and up, for all your kind words and support of both me and Mum after I had to announce last episode, that Mum has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. I was so touched. I was brought to tears by a lot of people's messages and kind words, and the people who were financially able to donate to the fundraising walk that I did. Thank you so much to everyone. It was so appreciated. The walk was a couple of Sundays ago and it went really, really well. It was a warm day. It was 31 degrees Celsius, which is in the 90s, I think, in Fahrenheit. But I was thankful because the day before it was 38 degrees Celsius, which I think is about 107 Fahrenheit. And if that had been the temperature of the day of the walk, I think I might have just had to do the walk myself at 4 a.m. or something. But thankfully, I was happy with 31 degrees and it went really, really well. It's very dry heat here in Perth. We don't get a lot of humidity, so there is that. But there are about 160 people doing the walk, I think. They had a jog portion. They all headed off first. Not for me jogging. And then there was the walking group. So then we headed round and it was the same route that everyone took. It's just the joggers did more laps to get their fuller amount in. So altogether thus far, I have raised $1,300 for Alzheimer's research, which is so exciting, and I thank you all so much. I had so much support from people in my workplace, my family, but especially you, the viewers, and people I know on Instagram and Ravelry. Words cannot describe how touched I am by your support. It was so, so kind of you. Mum is over the moon as well. She always gets very excited thinking that she has people in other countries who know who she is. So thank you. If you are able to donate, and I'm not saying that everyone is in that position, I'm not trying to put pressure on anyone, please don't feel that way, but my fundraising page is still open until January. I believe that's when it's cut off. It's cut off by the charity of the Alzheimer's research. That's not my date picking or anything. But if you are able to, the donation link will be in the show notes as well. But even if you're not, just thank you very, very much for your kind words and support. It really does mean a lot. So let's go on and broach the subject and then we can go on with the knitting. So today's brooch is this gorgeous little pottery bird, and that is from Rockridge Creations. They're an Australian company, and the brooches come on these cute little tags with their name there. So links in the show notes. When I put my order through, I mentioned that I had a podcast and that I do broaching the subject, and they have very kindly sent this brooch as a prize. Isn't that so cute? I'm a little jealous. I'd like to keep it. But I will be having a prize draw for this, so you can go to the thread to enter. I believe I will make the prompt, given we have animal theme happening here. What's an animal you would like to see as a brooch, but maybe an unusual animal. So birds and cats, relatively common in the brooch world. But let me know an unusual animal you would like to see as a brooch. And I will draw this winner for the prize within the next couple of weeks. So I'll put the date on there. With all my competitions that I have on Ravelry, if the thread is still open, even if it's beyond the date that I've specified, feel free to keep entering or posting, whatever the case is. It's only once the thread is locked that obviously you won't be able to enter. So keep that in mind. On the subject of brooches, I had a very exciting brooch chat with someone today. So it's Wednesday, as I said, and it's Wednesday afternoon. I'm actually on leave from work, but this morning I went to a seminar because it was something I already had booked prior to organising my leave dates. And it was a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. It was women in leadership. And the subtitle was It's Everyone's Business. Bit of a play on words there. And quite interestingly, that's sort of the similar theme to the White Ribbon Day. It's everyone's business. But it was. I won't get on my soapbox about the glass ceiling and disparity between women and men's salaries, etc., etc. But the speakers today were really inspirational, very inspiring. Lots of talk about, what's required culturally, organisationally, but things that you can do for yourself as well. So very interesting. But bringing this long, windy story around to my point to do with brooches, one of the speakers was wearing a brooch, and I just happened to, end up speaking with her at the morning tea break, and she complimented me on the brooch I was wearing, and then we had a whole conversation about brooches and how she wanted to get more of them, and that the one she was wearing, which was a lizard, had been given to her at a coaching seminar where the lizard was an example they used of different ways of thinking, obviously something to do with their topic, but they gave everyone a brooch as a memento at the end, and I thought that was a very awesome thing. Not only a great mental trigger for what they were talking about, but it's a brooch. How cool. So, enter the contest. You could win your own Rockridge creations. Thank you to them very much for donating the prize and for this awesome availability as well. Works in progress. Annoyingly, I broke one of the needles of this work in progress as I was walking it from the room it was in to the room I'm in here, which incidentally you'll see the couch that I'm sitting on is going down at an angle. This is the kids' activity area, which doesn't get used by the kids much because they spend all their time in their own rooms. This is the couch I put all the clean laundry on, so the fact that it actually didn't have any laundry on it was a good incentive to podcast here. But who knows what's happened to the couch. But yes, don't adjust your sets. I'm not sitting on a funny angle. This is just an old couch. Anyway, yes, as I was walking my knitting over, I was swinging my arm because I'm wearing my Fitbit again. And it counts steps by movement. So, I make sure that I keep my arm moving so it's a waste of steps otherwise, what's the point? And I hit the door frame, and this is just completely snapped out of the holder. So that's annoying. These were 4.5mm needles. Surely I have another pair of 4.5mm needles somewhere, but one never knows. And it's annoying because I was all set. I was sort of in the zone with this project. I was going to work on it again after podcasting, but it looks like I'll be looking for needles after podcasting. Anyway, that's my issue. You can see what the lovely project is. So check out this gorgeous gradient yarn. Oh God, sorry, hang on. Pardon me, the stitches are coming off. I'll just pause this a minute. I'm back. I'll just hold this end. Look at this gradient. Isn't that very, very pretty? So this yarn I showed you last week in acquisitions. It's by Space Frog, who are an Australian seller on Etsy. So remembering that the poor Australian dollar means international buyers, people outside of Australia, can get a really good deal because the Australian dollar is so low at the moment. And even if you're in Australia, it's a very good price anyway. So Space Frog gradients, and this one starts with the grey and goes out to the red. And the half, so that's a 50-gram ball. And the other 50-gram ball I used on this one, and I started with the red down the bottom here. And it's made its way through different shades of red and then merging into the grey. And this pattern is View from the Charles, which is a new one by Jennifer Lassonde, who is Boston Jen. And it was very generously the pattern given to me by Emilia. Thank you, Emilia. And this is half the shawl, so it's a very interesting construction. It's paid for pattern, so I won't go into it, but you knit half and then you pick up stitches to knit the other half. And that's why this half size, half and half, the gradient yarns that Space Frog does, it's really, really handy for this pattern. That was a complete luck. I hadn't necessarily thought about that. But I did buy this gradient yarn to make this pattern. Now, if you think about if you had 100-gram yarn with the gradient just in that full 100 grams, and you're only using half for this half, you wouldn't necessarily get to all the colours because it would be doing it through the full skein. So by doing the 50-gram ball for this one, it's fantastic because I got to go from all the way to red to grey, which I love. Now for the second half, were you waiting for it? Second side of this shawl, Jen says in the pattern, you know, you can either do another gradient, you can do a solid colour that coordinates, whatever really, you can use whatever yarns you like, but this half was, I'm going to laugh every time I say it now, laugh with half, was specifically designed to be used with a gradient, but obviously that's completely up to the knitter. But I was thinking, I think it would look really awesome to continue with the other part of the gradient, because I believe you go sideways for this second half. And I thought I could start with the grey, so that way I'd have the darkest part of the grey here and then all down the side, because that way the dark grey would be touching the rest of the colours, which I think would look really nice. So finding another needle aside, I'll be working on that and hopefully have more to show you next time. As you can see here, that's the end of my skein. I think I perhaps have 3 more rows to go. So even if I have to just use a little bit of this, it'll be the same colour, darker grey at the beginning, so it shouldn't make too much difference. And even if it goes into the lighter grey and starts going back, it's only for a few rows, so it's not going to really matter. But really enjoying that. This pattern is got, as you can see here, lots of different stitch types to it. And because it is half the number of stitches, it goes quite quickly. So obviously you've still got to do the second part, but it gives a good sense of progress because you're getting through it quicker, and especially with going through all the different colours makes it really fun as well. Sort of similar to doing self-striping yarns where, you know, you just want to keep going to the next colour. Similar principle. So that one's really fun. And it's living in my bag from My Muddlings, who is another Australian maker. My Muddlings there. And this is the custom fabric bag that I chose with the awesome, I was going to say the YarnderWoman fabric. Wouldn't that be cool? Wonder Woman fabric. So that's living in there. If I had put things away and it was living in the bag, perhaps that needle wouldn't have broken. So there's a lesson to me to tidy up. Tidying up's not my strong point. I keep everything hygienic. There's no germs, you know, no food scraps, that sort of thing. But messy could be a word to describe some of my areas in my house. I really like having really tidy place areas, but I've been like that since I was little. You know, I would love, you know, I'd get told that I had to clean my room. It would get to a point, and I would love having it so tidy. I'd feel like I was a princess. Never stayed. But whatever. Doesn't bother me. Luckily doesn't bother Damien, so there's no germs. We're all good. This is my next work in progress. To move on. This is the gorgeous yarn that I was so generously sent as a gift by Michelle of Berry Colourful Yarnings. I believe I don't have the tag, so never mind. This is called Owl Post, and it was from her Harry Potter kits that she so generously gave me. And the very pretty matching yarn bag, knitting bag rather, with the gorgeous winter owls. I just think is pretty, pretty, pretty. And the pattern that I'm knitting, I've only just done a little bit, as you can see. It's called the Harry Shawl. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and it is by the designer Caro Wiens. And as I said, it's a free pattern. That's it there. So it's stockinette and then some eyelet rows. Now you can see here in the pattern there are yarn overs in the middle. That's what it says on the written pattern, but on the actual pattern page on Ravelry, the designer has put a note saying that if she could do it again, she would change the increases. So I've done it the way she suggested in her rethink, which was make one right and make one left, going down the middle. This is a self-striping yarn, and you can see it's got the beautiful greys and then this really beautiful mottled browns, and there's even some red in there, which I just think is beautiful. You can see some of it in the skein as well. Just so pretty. This was going to be my project for the O Loops Harry Potter Knitalong, which I mentioned last time I'm in the Muggles group. I say it was because it hasn't got as much work as some of my other things, and the project has to be finished by November 30th, which is in 5 days, and I'm just not sure it's going to happen in time. So, dependent on my needles, I might be able to finish that View from the Charles as my pattern. The specification for this month's Knitalong entry is that it has to use 400 yards, so we shall see. If I get that View from the Charles done, it will work. If not, I'm afraid I'm not going to make it, but I'll do what I can. I have a half object to show you of something that I had just started last week. So let me just try and tuck that tag in. This is a modified version of the Whiz Bang pattern. So this part at the top here, that's all done in the Whiz Bang pattern. That's by Mrs. Shu. And I have modified it into a tube sock. So I haven't continued the pattern all the way down, and I haven't got a heel. This is going to be for my niece Emma for Christmas. I haven't started sock number 2 as yet. Usually I would do them concurrently, but there is a theme developing here. I definitely have more than one set of 2.5mm needles, but I don't know where they are. So yes, continuing theme of not knowing where needles are, maybe needing to tidy up a bit, but that's okay. This is the yarn I'm using. It's Knit Picks Felici, and it's in the Gummy Bear colourway. I've been pulling from the middle, which is why it's gone a bit floppy. I would like to match the colours, so I have a second ball of this, so I might actually start on the other ball so that I can make sure I have enough. I could weigh and work it out, but who cares. I'm not bothered about starting a second ball. I don't think it's going to make too much difference because they're already wound up. So that one's going along nicely. I have also started a pair of tube socks for my nephew, the brother of that recipient. He's so cute, what they cute. These, I'm not doing a pattern, it's just a plain tube sock, so I've done 1x1 rib on the top of this one as well as that one, which I think looks really nice. Oh, it's 1x1 twisted rib, so I've twisted the knit stitch and then just purled as normal. And this is also a Felici colourway. This one is Highland. So it's all different shades of green, which I think would be really fun. And these two are going to be with their partners, obviously when they're finished pairs, are going to be my entry in the Tiny Paper Foxes Make Two Along challenge. The idea behind that knit along is, or create along, it's not just knitting, is to make two of something that could be worn together as an outfit. So I think the original idea was, you know, for example, you might make a shawl and a skirt, something like that. But the broader inclusiveness of it is great. It's two things that can be worn together, so it can be for two different people. So these I think are going to be really cute because my niece and nephew can then both wear their Auntie Minda socks at the same time once they're ready. So obviously it's summer here in Perth or in the Southern Hemisphere, so they might not necessarily wear them straight away, but they still have to wear socks with their shoes in some instances. These are I'm going to make them more ankle length. These are sort of more maybe up to the calf, because if you sort of picture it that way, because I wanted to have quite a bit of the pattern on those ones. But they are going very nicely. The green ones are living in a bag from Little Skein in the Big Wall. And this print was called Metallic Sheep, which I think is really cute. Nice red inside. And the gummy bear ones are in my Suburban Stitcher bag. And it's one of her Christmas bags that I got last year with the cool blackboard holly and ivy, which I think, actually it'd just be holly then, wouldn't it? Yes, because those are holly leaves. Ignore me. So Christmas is coming. I do have one more Christmas present that I would like to start, but I think then, after I start that one, which is going to be a beanie, the beanie and then the other sock of each pairs, I think then I'm good for Christmas in terms of knitting projects anyway. We shall see if I get any other ideas about doing anything else, but I don't want to stress myself out, so let's try and keep it there, huh? I've got a few finished objects to show you, and 2 I need for this Friday evening, so I'm glad that they're finished. They are literally straight off the blocking mat, or blocking towel in my case, so I haven't snipped their ends yet. But these are the final 2 bookmarks that I needed to give to the other members of my book club that I'm in. So I showed you some finished bookmarks, might have been last episode, and I needed a total of 7. The pattern is the Lacy Waves bookmark pattern, and you can make it as big as long or short as you like. So I've done 5 repeats of the pattern, so it's very simple. I really would recommend it. They do make great gifts. Well, I'm assuming the recipients are going to like them anyway. I sprayed some starch, like ironing starch, on them when I was blocking them, just to give them a bit of extra strength. And they're really good and good fun. This one is Opal, and the colourway is Borneo Ricky. That's one you might remember I bought quite a while ago. But the reason you might remember it is that I pointed out it was one of the Rainforest series, and it's got a picture of a silverback gorilla on it, and I love gorillas. In fact, speaking of our brooch competition, I'd love a gorilla brooch. It's a little bit of a niche market, gorillas, so you don't often get them in jewellery. But that's the reason I was drawn to this yarn. See, roundabout way. But they called it Borneo Ricky. Gorillas don't live in Borneo, so it's very confusing to me, and I'm not sure where they're coming from. But anyway, that's the Borneo Ricky colourway from Opal. This lovely, lovely red one, which I think I might have to make one myself. This is in Fibre Nymph Dye Works in the Rally of Reds colourway. So a couple of episodes, or maybe even last episode, I showed you my finished object of the Bonbon shawl by the lovely Isabel of Fluffy Fibres, and I used the Rally of Reds colourway for that. So this is it on a smaller scale. You can see the red striping quite clearly in this kind of context. There we go. And I just started knitting from where the ball was up to, but it's really good that it started with the lighter red and finished there, so you get a whole sectioning of the colours, which worked out really well. So I'm sure my book club people are going to like that. I mentioned last time we're going to an Indian restaurant, and it's the one where you just pay what you believe the meal is worth. And the money, I think, goes to a charity that they sponsor. We all had to read a book that was set in India. I chose one that I found on Audible. It was called The Temple Is Not My Father, and I've not written down the name. No, I haven't. Sorry, I haven't written down the name of the author, but I'll put it in the show notes. It was a very short book. It only went for, I think, an hour and a half of being read. Very sad. I won't go into the specifics of it in case you'd like to read it, but it does reference, unfortunately, child prostitution. I whisper that, I don't know who's listening, if you've got little ears around. So, yeah, a bit of a sad topic, but very good story, well written, and I am looking forward to hearing what everyone else's books they are that have been chosen. Sarah, who's Sarah Pomegranate from Yarns at Yin, who gave me a great book recommendation. But I wasn't able to get that book on audiobook, and the paperback hasn't arrived in yet at my library. I've ordered it in, so that was one that was all about Indian food and cooking, which would be very exciting, so I'm looking into that, so I'll let you know how that one goes as well. Sorry, we got a little bit off topic. We are still unfinished objects, don't worry. This one also straight off the blocking towels, so the ends aren't woven in. This is become my go-to pattern for when I need something to knit quickly. The Knit Night Shawl by Louise Asbangham. So this is going to be another, it's a child's length because it's quite short, as you can see. This is knit in One Twisted Tree Late Night Light Bright colourway. And I like the way that the colours have sort of pulled in that stripy, sort of, not zigzag, but diagonal stripes. I knit this, actually I did all the knitting and I just didn't quite finish the casting off the same day. I was at another seminar last week that went for a whole day, and I suddenly realised in the morning I should take some knitting because usually at these sorts of seminars you're at a table sort of cabaret style so you can see the front, but I like to have some knitting on my lap because that really helps me engage. You know, some people doodle or colour in the O's, you know, the little holes in letters, you know, like if you had a capital B, colour in the, you know, things like that. They like to have my knitting. So I knitted pretty much all day while listening, while putting my hand up to ask questions, you know, still very engaged. The guy next to me actually fell asleep, so maybe if he'd had some knitting, he wouldn't have done that. But anyway, so that was really good. So I just knit all of my yarn that I had left. You may recognise this one from the Wild Goose Shawlette that I made a few episodes ago. So this was just the rest of the ball that I had, and I think that's going to make a really lovely present for a young lady sometime in the future. On the topic of the Knit Night, I think I've shown you this as a work in progress. This is another one. This one's a bit bigger, so this one will be for me, which is nice because I was hoping to be able to keep it. This one is in Berry Colourful Yarning in the darkened colourway, and it's got lots of beautiful different shades of grey within the skein, so it comes up really nicely. You can see there these ones often almost have a greenish tinge, and then you've got the light and the dark as well, so just beautiful. This one I'm calling my Leadership Grey on my project page, because this one I was also knitting at some workshops when I went to Canberra a couple of weeks ago, and it was a leadership conference, hence my title. And I got lots of comments from people around me. Like, I always check with the people sitting directly either side of me because I want to make sure I'm not distracting them. You know, I just have it in my lap, not up here. I'm like, you can't really see it, and with it being a garter stitch pattern, it's something I can just keep going. I'm not as fast when I don't look, but I can do it, at least with garter stitch. But at part of that conference, there was about 250 attendees, and hardly anyone was asking questions when there was question time, and it got really awkward. So I kept putting my hand up to ask something and then trying to think of something on the spot because there was this awkward silence. It was horrible. But yes, I got lots of comments from people in the bathrooms like, oh, you're so brave, and oh, you're so engaged, and oh, you're doing the knitting. So that was quite cool. So yes, I'm putting a good word out there for knitters that, you know, you can be engaged and knitting and that it's awesome. So those are my finished projects. I mentioned last week that I was thinking about having a Colour Affection knit-along, and I've got lots and lots of comments from people saying they'd be interested in that, so we will definitely do that early in the new year. Maybe towards the end of January, I'll work it out. We'll get through Christmas, New Year, all the other holidays that people celebrate or don't celebrate. It just can be a busy time of year. So yes, come January we'll work it out and we'll do that. We'll have quite a while to do it, maybe at least 2 months, because it is a big project. So get thinking about what coloured yarns you might like to use. I might put a chatter thread up already actually, so we can just sort of start planning. And then we'll kick that off sometime in January. So thank you very much for everyone's feedback on that. I think that'll be really fun, and we'll have some really great prizes for it as well. So speaking of prizes, we had a prize draw running, which I've now closed, and I'm about to announce the winners. Thank you very much to our very generous prize donors, who were the designers of the 3 shawls in question. Sorry, 3 patterns in question, they're not all shawls. We had the Schmancy shawl, which is donated by the lovely Marsha Ibuki, who is Very Little of the Very Little Twist and Stitch podcast. We had the Agatha socks, kindly donated by designer Claire from NH Knits. And we had the Azteca shawl, donated by Debbie Hostas. And speaking of Debbie, she still has a discount code running for YarnderWoman viewers. and that is valid until November 30th. So depending on when you watch this, you could still have some time to go and buy something. So check out the thread in the Ravelry group for the YarnderWoman podcast. That is called, I believe, Discounts for YarnderWoman Viewers. And the code will be there as well as in the show notes. Without further ado, the prize winners were drawn from numbers 2 to 35. It was a small prize pool this time around, which meant a higher chance of winning. And I drew, as always, using random.org, random number generator. And we had a lot of numbers in the teens that came up for that. So prize winners were number 17, who is Mrs. Dalton, Nicole from Saskatchewan in Canada. She has won the Schmancy shawl. Congratulations. Number 13, who was Fish2166, who was Tracy from Tasmania, and she won the Agatha socks. Congratulations. And number 14, our winner was Ella J, who is Lisa Jane from Australia, and she has won the Azteca shawl. Congratulations. Thank you to everyone who entered. It was great to see you there and have your comments about what kind of yarns you might like to use for the patterns. Thank you again to our very generous prize donors and designers. And as I said, we will have the prize draw for the cute cat badge as our next prize. So going into that as well. For acquisitions, I have been very, very kindly given some patterns lately. First off, I was given the pattern Blom by Mandarines, and that was given to me by the lovely Dubai Mel. Thank you so much, Mel. And Little Bobbins Danny gave me the pattern Cladonia, and I, off the top of my head, can't remember the name of that designer, so my apologies. I'll put it in the show notes. Thank you very much, ladies. That was so appreciated, and your kind words about Mum as well. I was also given the pattern The Hellebore Shawl by the designer herself, Prairie Girl Susie, who is from Prairie Girl Knit and Spin audio podcast. This is Susie's latest design, and she's done a lot of socks and possibly a hat. Apologies, Susie. But this is her first shawl, and it's knit in Prairie Girl Danny's yarn, One Twisted Tree, in the Shrewd Lady Mary colourway, which I happen to have. You may remember a while ago I was knitting the Windswept shawl by the lovely Molly of a Homespun House using that colourway, and I had to pull it out because my gauge was off. I haven't gone back to it yet, and then with Susie's shawl originally being knit in that colour, I think I'm definitely going to keep that colour for that and use another yarn for my Windswept, which I definitely still want to go back to. It just hasn't happened yet. So thank you very much for that, Susie. She has also very kindly given us a copy of her pattern for a future prize, so more on that later. I also received some more patterns, I bought some more patterns, but received a discount from the lovely Sarah Pomegranate of Yarns at Yin Ho. She has just released her 99th podcast episode, and in celebration of that, between now and just before the airing of her 101st episode, she is offering $2 off each of her patterns, which she has up for sale in Ravelry. There's the Rusted Wing, and I believe the other one is the View from Here, or a different view. I've gone completely blank. My apologies, Sarah. But they're both lovely shawls, and I took advantage of the very kind discount to buy both of those. So you don't have to put a coupon code or anything like that. The discount is just running for that time period, so go and check them out. I also got, just pulling something over here. This morning I was listening to the latest episode of Downseller Studio, and as you know, I'm entering a lot of things in the PSP, the Pigskin Party, Knitalong, and I was very excited to hear my name being called. So for one of the threads, I think it was for my Beans the Cat entry that I showed you last week, and I won a copy of one of Boston Jen's patterns. So that was Boston Jen who did the View from the Charles. This one, I'm not going to unravel it too much. Oh, there we go. So View from the Charles is one of her patterns, and I actually have almost all of her patterns, but luckily not all, but I will now. So I have asked for a copy of Ayla Grace, which was a shawl she designed as inspired by her little niece, who I think was about 5 at the time. So I thought it might be really nice for me to knit one of those for my niece to keep the niece theme going. So that will be coming. So I'm not sure when I'm going to cast that on, but at some point. What I was reaching for just now were some lovely minis that were sent to me by Jenny of Tiny Paper Foxes. Now, I realised last week, remember I said I had all these show notes and I had so much to talk about? I completely missed a whole section of my show notes, one of which was to talk about the Tiny Paper Foxes podcast. So I'll talk about that in Spin Me Right Round. But Jenny and I did a swap, and she sent me these beautiful yarns for my Cozy Memories blanket. So greys, reds, purples. Very nice. So thank you very much, Jenny. She also sent me a few other goodies, but I know on her own podcast... I've just found another one. It's a lovely sort of eggplanty purple. On Jenny's own podcast, she doesn't like to show all of the things that people send her because she likes to keep things private as a gift. So I'm respecting that. So she did send me some other lovely things, but I won't show you them here. Something I bought myself. It's a shearer, a little wallet, and it's so effective. It's sticky. It's so. Over here in Perth we have Smart Riders, which is, I think like in London there's an Oyster card. I'm not sure what they're called in other parts of the world, but where when you're getting the bus and train you just swipe your card instead of buying a ticket. So for a while I've just had the card in my wallet, and you have to get your wallet out, put it in there. It can be a bit fiddly when you're carrying things and you're in a big crowd, so I thought I'd get something where I can just swipe it straight with this, don't have to get it out. And this I got off Etsy. I have completely blanked the name of the shop, so my apologies, it will all be in the show notes. It was a shop in the UK. And it's made out of an old comic page, and then it's had acrylic sewn on. You can see the stitches. So who remembers She-Ra? She-Ra was He-Man's sister, and she had her own show. And just like He-Man, she transformed. So that's her in her, regular get-up, because this is a normal outfit, and that's her transformed into She-Ra. So it's very cool. I really like it. I can't remember who this character is. I'll have to look it up. I did find on Etsy like an old storybook of She-Ra, and that was a really good price, but the shipping then killed it, so I won't be getting it. But I'll have to do some Googling to refresh my memories. I loved She-Ra. It was so cool. Definitely one of my early feminine role models, or feminist role models, I should say. Not that I'm condoning violence, but she had a magic sword and everything. But my brother and I used to like playing He-Man and She-Ra, because obviously our brother and sister worked out quite nicely. And I've got a new Frida book. So this one, Michelle, who is actually knitting, of the Actually Knitting audio podcast, had told me about this one. It's the story of Frida Kahlo as a children's book. So it's talking about her life with these beautiful pictures. And I, love anything that's Frida, but I'm especially looking forward to being able to share this with my niece and nephew, to sort of instill in them the love of Frida and of art. Isn't it beautiful? So cool. So yes. That is Frida by Jonah Winter and illustrated by Anna Wan. Very, very pretty, gorgeous book. So I haven't actually sat down and read it cover to cover. I've just flipped through it, but I think, oh, isn't that gorgeous? The moon is crying. Very sad, but beautiful. I might have a nice cup of tea and sit down and read that, because I'm actually on leave as of yesterday. I've taken 3 weeks of annual leave, which is so nice, and just so nice to even say. I was supposed to take a couple of weeks off in February this year, and then you may remember I was offered the opportunity to have an acting manager's role, which of course I took up. But that's been really busy, and it's only now that I've been able to take the leave, and it's so nice. As I said, today I had the workshop that was already booked, and next week I have another workshop that was already booked, but that's okay, I'll fit them in. Neither of them are in the office, so it's still, out of work, but it's so nice. Yesterday I started off my leave with having a massage and facial. Damien had gotten me a voucher for our anniversary a month or so ago. So that was really nice, but I still feel a bit, I haven't wound down properly yet, so I think having a 3-week period means I should be able to chill quite nicely, and then hopefully go back with a really renewed zest and energy. So I think that's very important. Luckily, I am in a job where I can take leave and where leave is offered to me. I know for some people that's not the case, but I think if it is something you can do, then it's definitely good to take it up. Spinning me right round. So I mentioned just before the Tiny Paper Foxes podcast. So I know a lot of podcasters have been mentioning Jenny's fabulous show, but I would definitely like to as well. Jenny has very high production value on her podcast, and her partner Devon helps a lot with that, and he is actually not co-host, but he has a little segment in most of the episodes where he talks either about some photography tips or showing his spinning that he's been doing on his spindle. Jenny's idea behind her podcast is talking about her handmade wardrobe. So she creates outfits in her mind and then makes a shawl, cardigan or top piece and a skirt to go with it. So she talks through her sewing and her learning curve with that. I think she's doing a fabulous job. I can't sew anything that difficult. But I did mention last time that I bought some skirt patterns. One of them was the Ray skirt. Sorry, I'll just check my notes to make sure I'm giving you the right name there. Yes, the Ray skirt. And I know Jenny has made that one, and so has Isabel, Fluffy Fibres. She's shown hers. And just recently, Claire of NH Knits also talked about that pattern. That one's, those ladies are all much more experienced sewers than I am. But that pattern is supposed to be very good for beginners. It's an elasticized waist. It just has some panels. So there's no zip to deal with as a first go. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I really like that concept behind having a handmade wardrobe that all those ladies talk about, and a lot of other podcasters do as well. But I'm really, thinking more and more about it. And this is one of the things I meant to talk about last time, because I know I just touched on this a little bit. Making things that are going to match. Now, as I've mentioned before, a lot of my clothes, it all matches kind of anyway. But, I do have a few things that are not the same colours, and I think it would be good. Red has so many shades. There are so many different things that don't always necessarily match together. And that's something I'd like to take going forward and definitely be a focus for 2016. Talking about different shades of red, just as an aside, isn't it funny that pink is its own colour? As in, if you look at this yarn, it's red and then it goes into light red and then it goes into sort of a pink and pinky purple. But when you think about green, yes, we might have different names for the different shades like mint green, sage green, forest green, etc. But they're all greens, whereas we wouldn't call we wouldn't call pink light red. Isn't that interesting? I just thought of that before. It's just an aside, but anyway. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about health and being mindful and being happy. And it's something, that I've tried to think about most of my life, but really not consciously. When I think about how I was earlier in my life, teen years, 20s even, I didn't really feel conscious about that. But now, especially with health concerns that I've had, that family members have had, with mum's Alzheimer's, health and nutrition and movement are definitely being more in my forefront of my mind. As is everyone's attitude. I heard recently, actually it might have been in one of the books that I've been reading or listening to, that happiness, in terms of our feeling of happiness, comes 50% from genetics, 40% from how we think about things, and only 10% from our experiences. So I found that really interesting. With 50% being genetics, that means some people are, unfortunately for them, naturally going to have perhaps not such a positive starting point in terms of positive frame of mind, But that doesn't mean that that's where you're stuck, because 40% is how you think about it, but only 10% is what happens to us. So I think that was really something that resonated with me in terms of making sure I keep my focus on being positive and trying to be happy. No one can be happy all the time or positive all the time, and I'm certainly not. But I do really, really try to find a positive in everything and to find the happy. So one of the things that has really been giving me a lot of joy lately was a book that I heard recommended by Boston Jen on Downseller Studio. And it's called Better Than Before, Mastering Our Habits, I think it is. I didn't write the full title. But it's by Gretchen Rubin. And she wrote a book that I have also listened to, which I think is where I got that happiness quote, called The Happiness Project. And that was where for a year she focused on different aspects of happiness and things that worked for her. And one of the big things she says is just because a thing makes you happy doesn't mean it's going to make someone else happy. And then conversely, just because something makes someone else happy doesn't mean you're going to be happy with it either. So highly, highly recommend those books. I found them life-changing. You know, I'm obviously coming to them from, I'm already in that mindset of wanting to learn more about it, but I think they're just brilliant for everyone. And the Better Than Before, Mastering Your Habits, game changer. So many tips and things, and it's not telling you what habits you should make. It's talking about how to recognize what sort of person you are, knowing yourself, knowing what will work for you, what won't work for you. You know, there's no point saying that or deciding you'll do something when you know that there are a lot of blockages to you doing that, and so therefore you're going to fail. So I find that really, really interesting, and I cannot recommend it enough. So one of the things, or the habits that I wanted to get into and that I've been thinking about for a while, was bullet journaling. So you may have seen on Instagram that I started that. And crazy world, on the day I just Googled bullet journaling and it came up, I think bulletjournal.com, I think. I'll put the link in the show notes. And it had example pages of, you know, what bullet shapes to use and all that sort of thing. The example date was 15th of November, which was the date I was starting my bullet journal. I was like, ooh, weird, mind blown. It's obviously meant to be. So bullet journaling, if you're not familiar with the concept, it's a way of organising your action plans, your thoughts, using different shape bullets for events, for actions, that sort of thing. And it's just meant to be a way of getting things down in a way that would work for people who like to do that. And I say for people who would like to do that because, as I just said from the Gretchen Rubin book, things don't work for everyone. You have to find a way that works for you. And I know Sally Jane, Pink Hair Girl, in her, I think 2 episodes ago, was talking about how she identified herself as disorganised and said she felt a lot of guilt and unhappiness from seeing all Periscope videos, websites, all that sort of thing about, you know, getting organised and things you should be doing. But as she was talking, I was thinking, no one should be doing one thing or another. If the way you operate is not hurting you or anyone else, then go for it. You know, it's not, no one has to do bullet journaling. No one has to make lists of things. This is just something that works for me. So I really want to clarify that before I go any further. So I did want to get into bullet journaling because I have so many thoughts, well, not even thoughts, just, you know, I like to be organised for myself. And you have so many things to do and so many people to be accountable to, people to help. So having it written down and a place where I could write down my steps for the day, because as I said, I've started wearing my Fitbit again, something like that. So it's just a little place to channel my thoughts, to get them out of my head, to help me try not to miss anything that I need to get done. So I went to a stationery shop and I found some books. I didn't want just a plain lined notebook. It looked too, formal's not the word, but it just, you know, these blank white pages, black lines, I didn't want it. So I found this one, which is very cute. I don't want to show you what I've already written. Not there's anything sensitive in there, but it's boring for you. This one has, you can see, hopefully there, different kinds of pages. So it's got some graph paper. I'm just using it to write on. I'm not, you know, using the squares as such. This one where it's got lines but they're coloured, so it's a bit softer. And then this is quite fun. It reminds me of ice cream. Sort of pastel-y pink and white lines. And I've got this very cool little magnet bookmark of Wonder Woman. And this is from a packet that Dubai Mel sent me for my birthday. So it's coming very handy. There's several others that I use. That's the one I'm using for the day-to-day pages. And then I've got one to mark where a month is and where a week is and that sort of thing. So that's something that's working for me. I know when I posted about it on Instagram, a couple of people said they were interested in hearing about it. So I hope that's answered some of your questions. If you would like to know anything more about how I'm doing it, again, it's not the answer for everyone. It's not the be-all and end-all. But definitely do leave a comment in the thread or send me a message or anything. I'd be happy to talk about it. I just really like it. It's fun for me. And yeah, I really want to keep going with thinking about, I'd really like to listen again to the Happiness Project and Better Than Before, I think, to just really solidify some of my thinking about what would work for me. And yeah, very happy to discuss if anyone else has read them or listened to them. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts as well, or any of your thoughts just about happiness with the capital H, and what works for you, and things that you find important. Something I find really important is gratitude. So there's a lot in life I'm not happy about, but I'm grateful for all the good that is in it, and grateful for so much of life. The other night I was just made a normal dinner at home, and I got out one of the candles and lit it, and Sophie the teen came out and she said, "Oh, what's the occasion?" I said, "No occasion. Let's just celebrate the everyday. Let's just celebrate that we have a table in a home, in a safe place to sit down at. Celebrate that we have food, and not just food. We have food to choose from. We have a pantry full of food, and we have each other. And why not just celebrate the everyday?" So I really like doing that, and that's something I'd like to do more often. And yeah, why not make it a routine thing to be grateful? I think that's really, really important. Something else that I wanted to get into the habit of, or to make a habit, I suppose, is to find some more time to do things with other people. So maybe get out and find some groups that I'm interested in. And something that sounds really fun, you may have heard of a concept called No Lights, No Lycra. And I believe this is a group that started in Melbourne, Australia, but it's now international. So I'll put a link in the website and you can see if there's a group meeting near you. What it is, people come together, and it's like an exercise class, but it's not a class and it's nothing formal. They dim the lights right down, and you just dance. You just move to the music however you want to. And it's a way of, with no lights, no lycra, as in, no one's there to look at you. You're supposed to just let go of your inhibitions and just move and be happy. And I think that sounds so fun. So I'm definitely going to do that next week. Luckily there's a class or a group that meets really, really close to me, which is handy. And this is one of the things the Habits book was talking about. Not setting yourself goals that are difficult. If the group met an hour away, it'd be less likely I would go, because, I wouldn't necessarily have a way of getting there, or I wouldn't have time. So finding a group that works for me is going to be really exciting. So I'll let you know next time how that goes. I think it's going to be really fun. I love dancing. I don't go dancing really at all anymore. So I think this is going to be a good way to get back into it. And last time I was talking about not really knowing what was in my pantry because it's just full of stuff. So I've been quite conscious about trying to cook meals with things that I have on hand. I have had to buy a few little things here and there, but I've been finding, again, what's working for me is, instead of perhaps doing a bigger shop with lots of things and trying to plan the meals ahead, I'm finding what's working for me is having a bit of an idea about what I might make based on something I already have, and then picking up the rest of the ingredients as I walk home. So where I get off the bus, I've then got a 10-15 minute walk. But if I take a slight detour, I go past a little supermarket. So I've been finding it really useful to just go and buy the things I need for that day. And that way it's all used, there's nothing wasted. And I've been having some really interesting meals. I've been just going nuts for quinoa. Everything has had quinoa in it. And that's really, really good for you. So try it if you haven't. I even got the teen to eat it. She said it was tedious to chew. So put it in her mouth and then drank water and just tried to swallow it whole. Whatever. She ate it, it's fine. But I've been making really nice, because we've been having really hot weather, quinoa salads have been really, really tasty. And what else did I make? Oh, and no crust quinoa quiche. If you are in the Yarns at Yin Ho group, I posted a picture of that in the, I think it was the November Pantry Challenge thread. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying the cooking more, because I often don't enjoy cooking when it feels like a chore. I'm assuming other people can identify with that. But yeah, what it's really working for me is, buying the ingredients on the day, feeling inspired about what I'm going to be making, and making some things that are a bit different, so there's quite a bit of variety. So I've posted a few photos on Instagram, but I'll put a few photos in here as well so you can have a look at what I've been making. And I'll put a few links to some of the recipes that I really liked in the show notes, so you can try them out if you'd like as well. And last time we met, I mentioned that I was going to see a filmed version of the stage production of Hamlet that had Benedict Cumberbatch playing the lead role. That was so good. It was such an amazing experience. Damien and I went together, and the only downside was nothing to do with the production or the film. It was on in the afternoon, and the theatre were letting people in late, and the way that the sun was in the sky and the positioning of the building, as soon as the back doors opened to let people in, sunlight flooded in onto the screen, so that was a bit distracting. But what can you do? But yes, fantastic production. It was only shown for 2 days because it was actually produced, broadcast live 2 days before, but I think we got it delayed because the time differences don't work to have it live. I think if we got it live, it'd be 4 in the morning or something. So it was only a very short show run, so I'm not sure if it'll be available on DVD or what they're doing. But there were previews for some future shows that they're doing similarly, and there's going to be a filmed version of the stage production of Jane Eyre showing, I think it was in February, so I cannot wait for that. That's going to be fabulous. So definitely recommend that if, as I said, I'm not sure if they'll be showing the film, but if you see it available on DVD or if it becomes available for a download purchase, highly recommended. It was a great production, and Benedict Cumberbatch was just amazing, so definitely good. And I mentioned earlier the book that I listened to for book club, which was The Temple Is Not My Father. I've now started a new one that is called Station 11, and I haven't written down the author, so I'm sorry about that. I'll put it in the link. This one was recommended by Elena, who is Flying Muse, who does the Stitch Party podcast. She had just finished reading it, and she's very lucky. In her town of Spokane in Washington State, the author is coming to do a book discussion, and their whole town has like a book, not a book club, but they have these monthly, I think, book discussions where they get an author in and promote the book. It just sounds wonderful, and how exciting that the whole town does it. Well, I'm sure it's not every person in the town, but you know that it's a community event. So Elena recommended this because the premise is it's sort of a, post-apocalyptic scenario, and there's a group of people who walk around performing. They're an orchestra and a Shakespeare acting company. So Elena herself is in an orchestra and is a music teacher, and so that really is the element that spoke to her. And then my ears pricked up when I heard Shakespeare actors, and I am loving it. I sent Elena a message just saying, I'm 12 minutes into the audio and I already love it. And surprisingly for me, it's not just set in that post-apocalyptic time. The story keeps going back to before the crisis. And it's really interesting because thus far only one of the characters is both in the old time and in the post-apocalyptic time. So there's all these other characters being mentioned, and just as the story progresses, the intersections with all the characters weave in, and you go, there's all these moments. So really recommend it. It's amazing. And I think it's one of those books where if you have an interest in Shakespeare, or not an interest, but you have experience with Shakespeare or music, there are little in-jokes or references that just add that extra level of enjoyment, but that if you miss them, it's not going to ruin the story or anything. For example, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of the orchestral references that Elena was probably chuckling at, whereas I liked quite a few. I've picked up a few Shakespeare references and quotes amongst things. And yeah, highly recommend it. I'm about halfway through, so I'm sure I'll be finished it by next time, so I'll give you a full wind-up review at that point. And with that, I think we will sign off. As I said, I might go and have a nice sit down and read my Frida book and have a nice cup of tea. Actually, Damien has gone out for the afternoon. It's one of his days of working at home. He's preparing for a show this coming weekend where he'll be selling his artwork. So yeah, if you're in Perth, I'll put a link in the show notes where you can come down and get some. But yes, he's out, but he's stopping in to get me a burrito on the way home. Small things bring happiness. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find all the show notes at www.yarnderwoman.blogspot.com.au. Please come over to the Ravelry thread. I love to hear from everyone. It is so nice when I see comments in the episode show notes, episode Ravelry thread. Do enter the competition for the lovely brooch, and if I don't see you around on the internet, I will see you back here in a couple of weeks' time. Enjoy yourself, take care, stay happy, and happy knitting. Happy crafting. Bye.